Should you drift an all-wheel drive car? The question isn't can you drift an all-wheel drive car, but should you? Behind me, I have my 8.6, which is a rear-wheel drive car, and I have my GR Corolla, which is an all-wheel drive car. Now, I've gotten to play around with both on track with grip driving and drifting, and I can safely say that both of them make great drift cars. Believe it or not, even the all-wheel drive, super grippy GR Corolla is a very, very good drift car. And I'll explain why. Both of these cars share one major similarity, and that's the fact that they're both very good at cornering. And when you're good at cornering, the car is also quite balanced. And that's one of my favorite things about these cars, and why I pick cars like this over something that's faster in like a straight line, for example, is because these cars just feel so planted and they're so fun to drive. And on track, you can really feel it because the 8.6 and the Corolla are both very, very flat throughout the turns, and it makes it for a very fun and enjoyable experience. Now, in regards to drifting, the Corolla came factory with a knob on the center console that allows you to adjust the bias from the all-wheel drive system. So you can do a 30-70 split, so that means 70% of the torque is going to the rear wheels. You can do 50-50, and you can also do 60-40, where 60 is going to the front. And what's really interesting is you would think, all right, so for drifting, you probably want the 30-70 mode, right? You want more so rear wheel drive. But with this car, I actually found that my favorite is drifting in the 50-50 mode. And depending on what I'm doing, maybe even the front wheel drive mode. Because the way I initiate a drift with this car is I'll yank the e-brake to get the rear to kick out, and then once it's from there, the car has enough power to just continue the slide. So I guess it would be considered more so power sliding rather than drifting with the Corolla, but still though, it is good and it's very balanced throughout the turns when you're drifting it. But I will say the reason I think that the rear wheel drive bias is not the best for drifting is because it kind of feels unstable. The car really, you got to think of it this way, the base Corolla is a front wheel drive platform. That car was originally designed to be front wheel drive. And now while yes, the GR Corolla has like nothing to do with the base Corolla, essentially, they just kind of share the same name. I think that still the architecture was originally designed from a front wheel drive car. So that's why I think the car feels most planted and most balanced when it's in the front wheel drive bias. Yes, it's only 60% front and it is still 40% rear. It still feels the most planted. You know, you're going through a turn and it just feels like it wants to shoot out of that turn, versus the rear wheel drive bias. The reason I don't really like it is because it doesn't have enough rear wheel drive in it to initiate a slide simply from the throttle.
Oh, yes, sir. That was my best one. Yes, sir.
The way to initiate a slide with the Corolla is to either yank the e-brake while you're turning it or to flick it, because when you flick it, you're able to transfer the weight to actually initiate the slide. And the thing is with the rear wheel drive bias is it's really just not enough rear wheel drive in order for you to do it with simply just throttle application. So what I find is when I'm trying to slide it with the rear wheel drive bias, all it does is make the rear end feel a little bit more loose, but it's just like you're not actually sliding it. It just feels less planted, and that's all that happens from it. Versus the 8.6, a fully rear wheel drive car, your front wheels cannot be driven by the drivetrain at all. That thing slides out pretty well. You can do it with throttle. I don't tend to use the e-brake with that car because this one is automatic. So I just kind of hold it in first or second gear, get it to kick out, and that's all I can really do for that one. But for the Corolla, I mean, man, this thing's a lot of fun. When you get it to slide out, it feels great. Like, it genuinely makes no sense, but like, how am I drifting an all-wheel drive car with all of this grip? And I think the reason it makes no sense is because it has a lot of grip in the turns, but you're still able to slide it if you really try hard enough. Oh! Oh! That sounded bad. The next topic I want to talk about is driving physics. So how do they compare when you're in an all-wheel drive car versus even a front-wheel drive or a rear-wheel drive car? Well, let's start with rear-wheel drive. So with rear-wheel drive, when you are throughout a slide, you're going to counter steer. You're going to have the car self counter steer for you, and you're going to want to counter steer as well. But what I've noticed is with the all-wheel drive car, what's just like, doesn't make, like, it makes no sense. There's a learning curve to it. But this car, when you're sliding it, you almost want to just hold the wheel straight, because what happens is when you try to counter steer, well, your front wheels are pulling you. So what happens is if you try to counter steer, it's actually going to snap you the other way. So the best way to drive the Corolla in a drift scenario is to literally just kind of let the car figure out on its own what it wants to do. And the car at 300 horsepower, it's enough power that you can initiate a slide, but it's not enough power where you can use throttle control and really steer with the throttle. So I kind of just have to keep the throttle pinned until it doesn't have enough power to, keep going. But the thing is about the rear-wheel drive car is you can do a lot of throttle control. You can steer the car very easily with simply just a throttle, and with the steering wheel you can just kind of play with it back and forth, toss it left and right, and you can balance it pretty well. With an all-wheel drive car, not only are your front wheels turning the car, but they're also pulling you. So you think you're counter steering, but you're actually also pulling the car that way. So what I noticed with a rear-wheel drive car, it's kind of funny, is the way it slides is your back end kicks out. But with the all-wheel drive car, you just move left and right. And it's really funny, and it has a learning curve. But I do think there is a balance to both, and it's good to have both cars because you get to play around with both and see how it's different, because they slide differently. The 8.6, I would say it's more controllable. It's a little bit slower of a drift. You can have like tighter drifting, a little bit slower. And then the Corolla, on the other hand, you just feel like you're drifting faster. I mean, you are drifting at a higher pace than you are with an 8.6, for example, because you're literally moving the entire car, versus on a rear-wheel drive car, you're only moving out the tail end. So to conclude the video, should you drift an all-wheel drive car? Depending on which car, I would say yes. If it's a car like the GR Corolla, definitely. It makes for a really good drift car. I see a lot of people were saying, when the car first came out, a lot of journalists were saying that the Corolla doesn't drift like it does in the commercials. And while the commercials might be exaggerated, I still feel like if you can just figure it out, it's a really good drift car. And this is in bone stock form, also keep in mind. So if you did some mods, if you did like a hydraulic e-brake, added some more power, put it on less grippy tires, it would be pretty fun. I think it definitely would be. Let me know, what do you guys think? I've had experience with both. Which car would you choose for drifting? They both make very good drift cars, and by no means am I a professional drifter. I just go out on the weekends every once in a while and like to enjoy the cars. My cars aren't set up for drifting at all. They're both OEM plus grippy cars. They've got good tires on them, so they're not really meant for drifting. So the fact that I can drive them on the street super comfortably and then take them out and drift them, or take them on track, it's really fun. I love that they can do just about anything. I think this is a really good two-car solution. But other than that, if you did enjoy the video, please do make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.